of all, I'd like to thank you all very much for coming along tonight. It's been a great honour to write this book and to be entrusted with writing this book by the people of Howth and Baldoyle. I'd like to thank Eugene for his wonderful introduction. And of course, this book started off as part of the work of the Howth, Sutton, Baldoyle 1916 Commemoration Committee. And I suppose I'll just say a few things about the book and about the work. First of all, there's many people I want to thank, without whom the book would be unthinkable. And also, it's wonderful here that there's so many people here with families connected back to that wonderful time. People who were prepared to stand out when it mattered. And maybe I'll just read the dedication in the book, if you just could. I think it is an objective book and it's proper, straight history. It records what happened at the time. But that does not mean it is not in sympathy with the people who went out and did what needed to be done. So the dedication is, this book is dedicated to all those people of Howth, Sutton and Baldoyle who, when it mattered, were prepared to put their lives on the line for the achievement of Irish independence. It is a salute to their memory. And so, in researching the book, we really wanted to try and get close to people. And we have to think about it, this is 100 years ago. People are long gone. But, and they were forgotten. And in a way, some people say it's a pity this wasn't done 20 years ago when there were still people around, but it couldn't have been done then. People didn't want to bring up old rancors, communities were living together again, and so on, but it doesn't mean that what they did was ever in question. And maybe this was a last chance to do it, where we still have the sons and daughters. Some of the people I interviewed were in their 90s. Unfortunately, I see one or two not here tonight, hopefully they're doing well. Sons and daughters of people were involved, and also grandsons and granddaughters, and they were all very generous with their time and their information and anecdotes in the family and some records. And I really appreciate that. I thank them all in the book. I suppose I could bring out some of the things which the book has. In the appendix at the back, we actually list every single member of the IRA, coming on, the people who sat on the local councils for Sinn Féin, and who were involved in the movement. And it's quite an impressive list of people, because we could never think of Howth as an area like that, if you like. Also, there has been a tendency to think of the history of Howth as mainly about writers or about some of the great Anglo-Irish families, and it is about them too. But the ordinary people of Howth who've contributed when it mattered, who contributed their part, have also a proud history, and I'm very happy to contribute to bringing that history out in this. The book covers the whole period from 1900 up to 1925, because it is all one story. There was amazing social progress, economic progress before the First World War. People thought everything was going to pan out. We had Pádraig Pearse sharing a platform with John Redmond, welcoming the Home Rule Bill in 1912. You had Connolly and Larkin proposing establishing an Irish Labour Party for the Irish Parliament. Everyone expected to come along. And then it all fell apart. You had the rebellion in Ulster. And most of all, and in my book there, I name not the 1916 Rising, but the First World War as the terrible beauty that shattered everything. Because once that slaughter started, everything changed. And I try and bring that out in the book, how people realised that the world had changed and something different had to be done. And also how, after the First World War, the great event was the 1918 election. What people now think of as the War of Independence was really only the last few months of that whole period, when people had to defend the republic they had established and were busy setting up. It was an entirely democratic affair. The 1918 election, Sinn Féin swept the country, as Lord Wimborne said, on the simple proposition of whether they stay part of the empire or establish a republic, and the people have decided for a republic. Needless to say, that little letter to the cabinet was a secret letter until, I think, released in the 1980s. So it was when people had to turn to defend the republic they established that we got the War of Independence. When we got the Black and Tans, we got the War of Independence. And I also very purposely covered the Civil War, which was ferocious in this area too. Passions were very high about whether this treaty could be accepted or not. And I go into that, and I'm not taking sides. I understand people on both sides where they were coming from. But I do relate the story because it was quite ferocious. You literally, people talk about brother against brother, family against family, and the women too of Howth divided over it. And they actually fought face to face in the middle of Dublin City, and later down in Munster, believe it or not. I suppose a lot of new stuff has come out in this book, not just about the involvement of local people, but also about many famous incidents that happened that there was controversy about. There were 2 fishing boats sunk during the First World War by a German submarine, and why that happened, and a lot of people survived and some didn't, and just how it was used by the propaganda at the time to try and derail Sinn Féin about their gallant allies, as the 1960 proclamation called it. And I'm very happy to be able to say that I've been able to demolish a lot of that storyline, because several of the families involved of the fishermen themselves on those boats were central in the Sinn Féin movement later, because the issues were not connected. There's also the story of when a bunch of black and tans from I Company of the Auxiliary Division came and shot up a pitch and toss game in Sutton. And there's various nonsense put out by Dublin Castle at the time about people being ordered to halt and refusing to do so and all this. And I show that by having got the original documents from the London archives not to have been true. The British Army knew damn well it was an act of terror for the purposes for which black and tans were in Ireland in the first place. So I bring out a lot of these. It's been great what I've been able to find in the archives, the Irish Military Archives, in the Public Record Office in London, and in the newspapers at the time, which you have to treat very carefully, of course. But most wonderful has been the very fragmentary, with the bits and pieces of records that people have had in their families, and which I was able to bring out and use in writing this book. And I hope the book stands up to rigorous criticism, which I'm sure there will be, but I think that, as Eugene says, I hope it's an enjoyable read, and I hope that people of the area will feel proud of what their forebears did at that critical moment. I suppose there's people I'd like to thank, very particularly the 1916 committee. I remember 2 neighbours of mine, Colm and Rinny Carlton. I don't know if they're here tonight. Oh yeah, great to see you. I remember Colm showing me a prison autograph book from a member of his family from back in the Civil War times, and a brother of his had been killed in the War of Independence. And I was just thinking the wealth of things just in ordinary families around Ireland that we never really hear about. Even with all the commemorations, it's about the leaders, it's about famous personalities. But there's such a wealth of memories and of records in families here. And from that time, which is about 6 or 7 years ago, I've always thought I'd love to bring out the story of the people in this area that did these things when it was required. And the 1916 committee decided to try and bring out some of the information at the time. And there was wonderful people on that committee. It's chaired by Darren Lee. And also from the very start, I'd like particularly to thank Terry McCormack, whose own grandfather was killed in 1916 with the Citizen Army. And also Liam McLaughlin, several other people from the committee, and Garrod Lee, who were able to put me in contact with families in the area, and especially from a very early stage with Eamon Reid and his wonderful father, who played such a heroic role at the time, and also his mother, Mamie Lavery, as she was at the time. We hoped at one of the strongest branches of Cumann na mBan in the whole of County Dublin. It's a fantastic story which I try and relate there. And so it was through families that we were able to piece together and try to bring to life these people, the passions of the time, that they aren't just dry names on paper, but actual living people who were doing what they believed in. So I'd like to thank everybody there. And I suppose a special note of thanks really goes to Kevin Rickard. Many people who know Kevin, and a modest man, but an extraordinary man, who has kept records of Howth, preserved many things that would otherwise have been lost, the whole heritage of the fishing community. It was him who got the Folklore Commission out here in the 1980s, 1990s, to talk to people from that time, and a lot of those testimonies are now preserved, which never would have been otherwise. I think we owe him a great debt. And through Kevin, he was great help in sourcing further information and putting me in contact with people and helping me along the way. So I want to a special note of thanks to Kevin. So I suppose, just in conclusion, I'd like to thank the people who were foremost in making the production happen. I'd like to thank Hal Ryan, the owner of this wonderful hotel, and who's a member of our 1916 committee, not only for making the hotel available, but also in his wonderful organising work together with Jeanette Byrne, with publishers, with printers, and so on. Fantastic work. I'd also mention David Gibbon of the Liffey Press, who did a fantastic layout job under incredible time pressure. We were working at incredible hours in the last days to get this done and ready for tonight. And also to Barry Kidd, I see Barry there, who designed that beautiful cover. And he came up with it very fast, just an inspired idea. And again, no guns, none of that. It's just what it's about. It's about creating a successful Irish Republic, and just to start with. And just a brief note on the two medals on the front. They're not just any old medals. One you can just barely make out the name, and that's the medal of James McCormack, who was citizen. They're both Citizen Army men's medals. One on the left, James McCormack, family man, an ITGW trade union guy, involved in that great struggle with the farmers that Eugene mentioned. And he was killed on Easter Wednesday in the GPO, Moores Lane. And the other medal is the Black and Tan War Medal of Joseph McDonough, another Citizen Army man. So, they're not, as I say, any old medals. They're very particular ones. So, I suppose on that note, finally, I want to thank Helen, my wife, my wonderful wife, for her patience, her love. Just never would, the madness involved in doing a book, just never would have been possible without her wonderful support throughout. So on that note, just thank you all very much for coming along. I hope I've done justice to our communities, and the people would be that a bit more proud of the history of the area. Thank you.